little background on Josh. We are extremely fortunate that he joined our team last January of 2019. He got his BBA in accounting from GCSU in Milledgeville and his master's in accountancy from Liberty University. He's a certified CPA in the state of Georgia, as well as a member of the American Institute of CPAs and a member of the Georgia Society of CPAs. Prior to Josh joining our team at Rome, he worked for a top-tiered national or regional accounting firm, Hancock, Askew & Company, for about 8.5 years. And as he was working his way toward the manager role, he specialized in business consulting, planning, and tax preparation. He was also Rome's most trusted advisor for almost a decade. He kind of guided us through one location to where we are now with 6 locations. He is brilliant. We are so grateful that he has poured into us as much as he has, and we're extremely excited for him to pour into you all as well. So I'm going to put him live now. We're grateful that y'all have taken time to do this. And Josh, I'm about to put you on cam, man.
Thanks, Brett. I appreciate it. So again, to reiterate Brett's point, thanks so much for joining us today. I know there's a lot of information coming to you about certain programs within this CARES Act, along with other information just in business and in society. So we want to be a resource to you as much as we can through this time. Very, very grateful that you guys are entrusting us to at least present some of this information to you as we know it today. Some disclaimers on this before I get started is I've been on a number of webinars, a number of phone calls the last week or so, and info specifically for this program that we're going to talk about today is constantly changing. And so even some questions that have come into me for this webinar as early as Monday or Tuesday, some of those answers have slightly shifted. And we'll get into more of that today. So lots of stuff changing. The SBA's trying to format this so that banks can understand it and deliver it to their clients in a timely manner and have them apply for it. The issue is it's unprecedented. It was signed into the law last week. And so there's just a lot of processes that have to be worked out around the number of people that are going to apply for it. So their disclaimer is I, like all of you, are at my home. And so the internet might be slow at some cases. We've experienced that a little bit on all the Zoom calls we've been on for the last 3 weeks. So if I do freeze or pause for a couple seconds, I promise I will be back. The other disclaimer is my current coworkers, i.e. my wife and my daughter, are a few rooms over. So I am the only one not on mute on this. So if you do happen to hear a yell or scream or cry, I promise everything's okay. My daughter is just super excited about the information being delivered on this webinar. So, so the format that I want to do this in is go through some info that I've gotten from the SBA, more specifically the fact sheet that they've been updating on a regular basis because info has been changing a lot. So I attempted to put some sort of PowerPoint together at the beginning of this week, and with all the info that was changing, after a couple of reiterations of it, I decided to just go through this fact sheet, and I will make this available to you. It is available to you on the SBA website, but we will send this out as a follow-up. I've gotten a number of questions over the last week about this, specifically from a lot of you. And so I want to go through those at the end of this, and then we'll leave plenty of time for questions and answers at the follow-up at the end of this webinar. So I'll get going, and it looks like there are around 100 participants. So I'm hopeful that we have time to get through anyone's questions that they do have, but just be patient as we work through it. So the program that we're going to be talking about in relation to the CARES Act is the Paycheck Protection Program. It's the $349 billion forgivable loan program that's being offered to small businesses to pay their employees during this COVID-19 crisis. That is the high-level summary of this specific program that we're going to be talking about today. It's the Paycheck Protection Program, or how I call it, the Keep Your People Paid program. These loan amounts will be forgiven as long as the proceeds are used to cover payroll costs, and we'll get into more details to what payroll costs are later in a little bit. Most mortgage interest, more details there, rent and utilities over the next 8-week period after the loan is made. So you've got 8 weeks potentially to spend the funds that you receive on payroll costs, mortgage interest, rent, and utilities. And so we'll get into more detail about that in a second. But the other factor from the loan forgiveness program is employee and compensation levels are maintained. And again, more details to come on that. But the idea is these funds will need to be used to pay your employees. Payroll costs are capped at $100,000 on an annual basis for each employee. So again, due to likely high subscription for this program, they're anticipating that 25% cannot be used, 25% of the funds cannot be used on anything other than payroll. So they want you to use this for the majority for payroll. And that's kind of the basis of this program. Loan payments will be deferred for 6 months after the forgiveness period has ended and your loan amount has been calculated based on what isn't forgiven. When can you apply? Starting tomorrow, based on the up-to-date information that we received as of last night, April 3rd, small businesses and sole proprietorships can apply. So as of tomorrow, where it stands now, most banks are going to be accepting applications from small businesses and sole proprietors. More info to come on who's eligible, but that's the small business sole proprietors. April 10th, as it stands now, next Friday, I believe, independent contractors and other self-employed individuals can start applying. So they want, again, small businesses to take the first wave. That's probably where the majority of the payroll, is. And then they're going to open up to independent contractors and self-employed. Where can you apply? You can apply through any existing SBA lender, through any federally insured depository institution, federally insured credit union, farm credit system institution that's participating. Other lenders are going to be available to make these loans once they're approved. Based on calls that we've had the last 4 or 5 days, they're opening this up to as many lenders as they can. So they want to get them approved quick and give them the ability to field these loans. So who can apply? All businesses with 500 or fewer employees can apply. So that means nonprofits, veterans organizations, tribal business concerns, sole proprietors, self-employed individuals, independent contractors with 500 or fewer employees. And exception there is businesses in certain industries can have more than 500 employees, and more details to come there. So specifically here in the hotel and food service industries, the SBA affiliation standards are waived for these types of companies. Franchises as well, there's some exceptions on a per location basis. So if there's a franchise with collectively more than 500 employees, they're going to, as it stands now, do the loans based on a per location basis as long as there's not 500 employees at those locations. So what do I need to apply? So you'll need to complete the Paycheck Protection Program loan application. And again, a sample of this is available on the SBA website. And so again, as of my call yesterday, even some items on this are changing. But you can tell it is a 3-page, 4-page document, very basic information from your business. And hopefully most banks are working this into a process where you can apply online. So specifically with our bank that we're walking through this program with, the first step is, they're still figuring out how to offer this online, as are all banks, but just submitting an application should hopefully get you in line. And that's what we were told by our banker this week. So we've kind of put together tentative applications for our entities, and so more to come there. But again, the banks are rushing to work through a process to make this very easy. So I know that some people are probably feeling frustration with the process and getting kind of the runaround, as you would call it, from banks because they're not ready to take all these applications yet. And so that's that's normal, I think, for most banks across the board. So hopefully by tomorrow or even early next week, there will be a great process that they can then start taking on these applications. So what other documents will I need to include in my application? So you'll probably need to provide, and this is a bit vague as of right now, but payroll documentation, whether that's payroll tax forms, a form of your income statement with trailing 12 payroll numbers. Specifics on that are still to come out. And as of yesterday, banks were still working through exactly what they need to get to document what they, from the payroll documentation standpoint, what they need for the loan. I also heard that some payroll companies, Paycheck, ADP, a lot of the big payroll companies are hopefully putting in a system to where you can access your monthly payroll via a click of a button, and it'll help you calculate what your loan could be for this type of loan. So do I need to first look for other funds before applying for this program? No. So they're waiving the usual SBA requirements that you try to obtain some or all of the loan funds from other sources first before you're approved for an SBA. So essentially they're waiving the credit elsewhere requirement. How long will this program last? June 30th, 2020. And so they encourage people to apply quickly, but because there is a funding cap, but lenders will process your loans hopefully through June 30th, 2020. How many loans can I take out under this program? Only one per tax ID is what I heard yesterday. So if you've got a number of businesses that you're an owner of, and they're all set up as separate entities, then you can apply per tax ID as long as you have payroll specifically. So some companies may again fall under that self-employed contractor type entity, and those specific guidelines will come out soon on specifics around how much or how often you can apply there. What can I use the loans for? And so this is kind of in the detail: payroll costs, including benefits, interest on mortgage obligations incurred before February 15, 2020. So if you were to take out a loan as of today, you wouldn't be able to use those funds to pay that mortgage. Rent under lease agreements in force before February 15, 2020. So no new leases after that date, and then utilities for which service began before February 15, 2020. What counts as payroll costs? Payroll costs, salaries, wages, commissions, capped at $100,000 on an annual basis for each employee. Employee benefits, including cost for vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, allowance for separation or dismissal, payments required for the provisions of group healthcare benefits, including insurance premiums, and payments of any retirement benefit. State and local taxes assessed on compensation. And for a sole proprietor independent contractor, wages, commissions, income, net earnings from self-employment, capped at $100,000 on an annualized basis. How large can the loan be? And so everything that I've read is 2.5 times your average monthly payroll, capped at $10 million. So the lesser of those two. So very, very large company with less than 500 employees, and your average monthly payroll, or 2.5 times your average monthly payroll is more than $10 million, it'll be capped at $10 million. Some specifics regarding seasonal or new businesses. I was told yesterday that it'll be on a kind of a per application basis, and you'll have to prove, the seasonality of your business and the payroll, and then they'll take that into consideration and getting an amount for your loan. Again, payroll costs will be capped at $100,000 annualized for each employee. Also, I think a number of you guys joined prior to Brett giving this housekeeping rule, but everyone is on mute. So if you have come into the call since the beginning and you're not seeing the mute function, I guarantee you are on mute, so you don't have to worry about finding that on your Zoom call. So the next point is forgiveness for the loan. And so you will owe money when your loan is due if you use the loan amount for anything other than payroll costs, mortgage interest, rent, utilities, payments over the 8 weeks after getting the loan. So you've basically got 8 weeks to spend the amount of your loan on payroll costs, rent, utilities, and specific mortgage interest. So again, this is something that they are still working through, but as we see it now and read it now, you'll have 8 weeks to spend those funds and get them forgiven. So the other piece is you will also owe money if you do not maintain your staff and payroll. And so specifics there are, if your loan forgiveness will be reduced if you decrease the number of full-time employee headcount. And then the level of payroll, your loan forgiveness will also be reduced if you decrease salaries and wages by more than 25% for any employee that made less than $100,000. So specifically there, with the $100,000, if you've got someone making $150,000, it's capped at $100,000. So that percentage doesn't weigh into that. So that's kind of why they keep reiterating the $100,000 cap. Rehiring. So if you've let go a number of your employees, you have until June 30th, 2020 to restore your full-time employment and salary levels for any changes made between February 15th and April 26th. How to request loan forgiveness. You can submit a request to the lender that is servicing the loan. You'll have to verify the number of full-time equivalent employees and pay rates, and then payments on your mortgage, lease, utilities, obligations, things like that. The lender must make a decision within 60 days of you getting them the documentation. What's the interest rate? As of today, it's at a 0.5% fixed rate. And when do I start paying interest on the loan? All payments are deferred for 6 months. However, interest will continue to accrue over this period. And so any amount that isn't forgiven, interest will be or payments will be deferred 6 months, but interest will accrue in that 6-month period. Another thing that has changed is the loan maturity date. It's been as high as 10 years, and more recently they've come through and they've lowered the interest rate to 0.5 and changed the due date for the loan to 2 years. Can you pay the loan earlier than 2 years? Yes. No prepayment penalties or fees as of now. Do I need to pledge any collateral? No, no collateral is required. And do I need to personally guarantee this loan? No. As we read it now, there are no personal guarantees. One disclaimer there is, however, if the proceeds are used for fraudulent purposes, U.S. government will pursue criminal charges against you. So what do you need to certify? So as part of the application that I just showed, there's a number of things that you will certify. Big part of this is because of the number of applications that they're going to have, they're going to have to take personal kind of certifications to avoid any fraud. Pieces of this are current economic uncertainty makes the loan necessary to support your ongoing operations. You'll have to certify that that is true. The funds will be used to retain workers and maintain payroll, or to make the accessible mortgage, lease, and utility payments, approved expenses. You have not and will not receive another loan under this Paycheck protection program. You will provide the lender documentation that verifies the number of full-time employees. The loan forgiveness will be provided for the sum of the documented payroll costs, covered mortgage interest, covered rent payments, covered utilities. So a lot of kind of revisits there, but just wanted to be sure that you guys had all the information, especially those who came in a little late. The last piece is you acknowledge that the lender will calculate the eligible loan amount using the tax documents you submitted. You affirm the tax documents are identical to those that you submitted to the IRS, and then there's some other authorizations that the banks have the ability to share information with the SBA lender. So that's, again, the fact sheet that we have most up to date through the SBA. Again, that same fact sheet is available on the website. So these are some questions that I did get over the last 3 or 4 days, and I wanted to run through these and then also leave some time to answer some of your Q&As that have come in over the last 20 or so minutes. So there's an exclusion for employees earning more than $100,000. Does that mean that their salary is excluded entirely or simply capped at $100,000? So for purpose of calculating your loan, it's capped at $100,000. So you can include it in calculating the loan, but no more than $100,000. If we have already executed layoffs, could we still be eligible for the loan forgiveness? If we bring back our employees, yes. You'll have to rehire your employees in the applicable time period for that to be forgiven. As a business owner, is my W-2 paycheck from my own company covered in the PPP as well? Yes, as of what I read right now, W-2 paychecks are included with that cap. So again, I think a lot of information will come out about this in the coming days as it relates to self-employed individuals. But the way I understand it now, that will be included as payroll if you are on W-2 as an owner with that $100,000 cap. How fast can I get a loan? I think we've all heard rumors that this will be a quick process. Hopefully, once the banks get their processes in order for working through these applications, the funds should come out pretty quickly. Again, there's no guarantee there. And I was on, again, the webinar with our bank yesterday, and the biggest process they're working through is setting up an ability to process all these applications. So I think once that happens, hopefully the funds will be available quicker rather than later. But I can imagine that at the beginning, that won't be same day funding. And I would imagine it'll be a day or a week probably at the earliest, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So, but again, more will come out probably in the next 24 hours about the process there. How do I prove that my losses are because of the coronavirus? So the new loans are available, and any business for which, quote, current economic uncertainty makes the loan necessary to support your ongoing operations. So again, each lender will probably make a case-by-case basis there. But in my thoughts and what I've read is any showing of revenue being down, whether you're looking at a trailing 12 or a year over year, where if you're in March and April, we're expected to be this based on 2019 revenues, and they are consistent for the last 12 months, and then you can prove that revenues and invoices are down for April and May, then that should be significant. But more will be provided by your lender that you go to. So I run a small partnership or S corporation. Am I eligible? So the SBA is working on detailed regulations here. So hopefully we'll get more published by tomorrow. So I think that will again fall into the self-employed field that'll be available to apply for next Friday. What sort of thing could disqualify me? So this is kind of information that I've read on numerous sites. So the application also provides a long list of potential disqualifying factors. You cannot receive the Paycheck Protection Program loan if your business or any of its owners have been previously suspended, declared ineligible, or were voluntarily excluded from the loan program by the federal agency, or are presently involved in any bankruptcy. You'll be excluded from the program if you have ever taken a loan from the SBA that subsequently caused a loss to the government and current delinquent or resulted in default. The application also excludes businesses in which any 20% owner is an individual who is currently subject to criminal charges, who has been previously convicted or otherwise punished for a crime against the minor. What information should I prepare? So this will be, again, specific to your lender. We give a little bit of information at the beginning of this, but just basic identifying information for your business. So based on the loan application, your business name, your business tax ID number, average monthly payroll, number of jobs supported by your company, what specifically you want to use the loan money for. There are literally 4 boxes: payroll, rent, mortgage interest, utilities, and other, that you check more than one there. So it seems like it will be a pretty simplistic process from a documentation standpoint. Again, the lenders will have more information on what exactly they need, whether it's additional payroll forms, income statements, tax returns, all that kind of stuff. So it looks like there are a lot of different federal loan programs. Can my business receive funding through more than one? Yes. So I got this question earlier this week. And businesses that have a pending SBA disaster assistance loan can still receive funding through the Paycheck Protection Program, as long as the loans are not being used for the same thing. So as of now, that's the guidance that we've been given. You can also apply for a loan if you have an insurance claim pending. A single business cannot apply, again, for more than one Paycheck Protection loan. What if I'm paying off a current SBA disaster loan? The Small Business Administration has made all deferments through December 31st automatic. So that means small business owners do not have to contact the SBA to request deferment on these loans. They've already been done. If you have an existing or pending loan through the SBA Disaster Assistance Loan Program, you can refinance it into your Paycheck Protection Program based on information I received yesterday. So that is something you'd be capable of doing and possibly lowering your interest rate. If I receive a salary as a sole proprietor, independent contractor, a limited liability partnership, or other business that I own, can I count my own salary towards loan forgiveness? Again, this is to be determined. I think, again, we're going to get some more guidance on this over the coming days. But in what I've read, if this is eligible, there would be a $100,000 cap. So I'm assuming by the guidance that contractors and independent contractors and self-employed people will be eligible as of next Friday. Then I'm assuming that they'll fall into the $100,000 cap program, and then you'll probably have to give some sort of documentation of 1099s you've received, or kind of substantiation of income that you've received up till now this year. Am I responsible for the interest on the forgiven loan? As I read it now, no. If the full principal of the loan is forgiven, the borrower is not responsible for the interest accrued in the 8-week period where they are spending their money and using it for the payroll costs. The remainder of the loan that is not forgiven will operate according to the loan terms agreed upon by you and the lender. I don't have employees. Can I still qualify? Again, some of these are all falling under that self-employed type business. And the CARES Act states individuals who operate under the sole proprietorship as an independent contractor or eligible self-employed individuals shall be eligible. Applicants who fall in this category, again, will need to provide documentation. Should it be payroll tax forms reported to the IRS, Form 1099s, and any other income and expense documentation that they have as a business. What if I have a franchise? Again, talked about those rules. They're doing it on a location basis. So if the entire franchise has more than 500 employees, it's my understanding that they will use it on a per location basis to deem eligibility. What if my business hasn't been impacted yet? So again, that brings us to the date, June 30th, that you can still apply for it. So if you don't need to apply for it now, then you have until June 30th. But if you are thinking about applying, given the cap on the funds and probably the number of applicants that we will have over the next week, I would go ahead and apply for it if you do have applicable payroll costs that you will need to be covered. So again, all of that will be on a case-by-case basis. So what do utilities include? Electricity, gas, water, transportation, telephone, internet access, for which services begin before February 15th, 2020. So again, I think more documentation details will come out regarding that, but that is what I've read so far. I am a Georgia-based business with international clients and international vendors. Do I qualify? That's a tough one. It's my understanding that if you are a Georgia-based business and you are self-employed, or if you are paying Georgia employees, then you are eligible, regardless of where your revenue comes from and where your vendors you are paying. So again, I think that will be something that you can really discuss with your lender. But if you are a Georgia-based company and you are paying Georgia income taxes, federal income taxes, I'm not sure why you wouldn't be approved for this. So, especially if you have Georgia-based payroll and employees as well. So, those are the questions that I received. I hope those were helpful. Brett, I do see we've got a number of questions that we can go through now.
Yeah.
Again, I'm hopeful that I can supply you with the answers, but if not, I think most of you have my email address, and I can certainly follow up with you after this.
Sure.
But again, I do want to reiterate that a lot of these facts are still being sorted out. And so again, these are kind of the hard and fast facts that I have seen that have been pretty consistent over the last week. That's why I feel comfort in sharing those to you. But again, I think the main resource that you will want to contact is your lender. They're going to be getting this information first, and we'll be able to walk you through your specific needs as a business and as it pertains to your business. So But we'll take a shot at answering a lot of these questions. And again, I apologize if we don't get to it. We will have some follow up in the questions after, so we can get most of these answered. So.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. We do have a lot of great questions. So just to reiterate one more time, we will send a follow-up email that had all of the questions that Josh just answered written out for you, as well as contact information for Josh. So if we don't get to it right now, you will for sure be followed up with, and you'll also get that document. I know that was a lot of information. So let's start here, Josh. Some of it you covered, but it's just kind of high-level stuff that you might need to touch on again. Starting with 1099 contractors who work for an organization. They are covered, but how does that process work? Does the 1099 contractor apply individually, or does the organization that employs the 1099 contractor apply for them?
Yep. So we have that same specific question with Rome, and I brought that up yesterday. And so when you apply tomorrow or in the next coming days as a business, the lender should have some more guidance on that as to does that 1099 contractor fall into your monthly payroll, or do they need to separately apply for that on their own starting next Friday? So as of right now, there's not 100% guidance on that based on the question that I had that same question yesterday. And so that's the guidance that I received. So I know not super helpful, but if you are walking through this as a business tomorrow, hopefully they'll be able to give you a lot more clearer guidance on including them. And it will just be a quick addition to your average monthly payroll that you can add to your loan cap. So
great. Thank you, Josh. Next question. I'm a sole proprietor. I work from home and I track everything manually, not through an accounting software like QuickBooks or through a payroll company. Do I still qualify for PPP? And if so, how do I track well enough to receive forgiveness for the loan?
Can you repeat the beginning of that? So sole proprietor with no employees, work from home.
But do not track anything through an accounting software. Everything is maintained and kept up with, but not through an accounting software that it could be easily exported from.
Yeah. I think my gut there is if there are 1099s that you've received in the past, that'll help substantiate your income from 2019. They'll want to see that as documentation for income. Any filings that you've done with the IRS, that'll help substantiate the income that you received as a sole proprietor. That's what I'm thinking that they will require based on everything that I've read. As far as hard and fast books, more to come there, I'm sure. But I think a lot of people will be in that similar situation where they don't have a QuickBooks or a Xero account that they keep up to date. And so I don't know if they'll require bank statements. If you have a business bank account, that may be something that you can supply to them in the short run to at least substantiate income that you've had over the first 3 months to get qualified for a loan there. So I think those are probably, again, the details that they will be sorting out over the next couple of days to kind of create a streamlined process for specific sole proprietors in that case. So yeah.
Great. Thanks. So this one says, our biggest concern is getting our CARES application in early, and you touched on this, with a lender that's approved by the SBA. We've requested information from 2 primary banks, large banks, Wells Fargo and Chase, and they seem like they have no idea. They're clueless. Can you point them in the direction of any approved lenders that will allow them to submit their application first thing tomorrow morning? And can it be done online? I guess with a caveat there being this is not an advertisement or anything for any banks, but do you have any recommendations so that it can be submitted as quickly as possible?
Yeah. I can't guarantee the timing on this. I do know that we bank with a larger institution for some of our banking needs, but also a community bank for some of our other needs. And I do know that I've gotten a lot better response time from community banks. They are still receiving a ton of applications and requests kind of for their systems and their capabilities. but I have been more impressed with community banks' response to this versus larger ones. So to speak to that though, I would feel more confident in the electronic systems that the larger banks will probably have in place over the next 48, 72 hours to process these, just given their size and their capabilities from an IT standpoint. But as far as getting towards the quote unquote front of the line, I've had better luck specifically with a community bank that I have a relationship with. And I know most people may not have a relationship with a community bank. So it's worth reaching out. We specifically bank with Oconee State Bank. We have relationships there. So that's a remarkable bank that we've used over the last couple of years. But there are a ton of banks that are similar to that, where it'll be a phone call or two that you can probably start having a relationship with someone. I know that the purpose of this program and the government's intention of opening this up to so many lenders is because of that same question. And so not to find the bank that no one else is using, but that may be a good approach, is to contact a smaller community bank that you can kind of get your foot in the door quicker. So
great. That's an awesome answer. Thank you, Josh. So this one will be very applicable to Rome. I'm sure you'll have an easy answer here. Can you discuss affiliation based on common ownership, specifically if owners will need to file an application for each business, or whether all businesses can be considered under one application?
Yeah, so guidance that I've gotten is it's based on your tax ID number. And so if you are a business owner that owns more than 20% of a business with separate tax ID numbers, then you will file for each tax ID number. That's the guidance that I've read and I received over the last couple of days. Rome is specifically set up like that with separate LLCs, and so filings for specific businesses like that will have to come with a number of applications. But the good news is the application is short. You can go through the same lender relationship that you have and do all of them. And so that's the hope there. But that's the guidance that I've received, is it's based on your tax ID number. And then all owners over 20% will have to approve certain line items on the application.
Great. One here, if you reduce workforce by a few employees, you touched on the 25% cap in diminished wages in order to qualify or have the loan forgiven. This one says, if I reduce the workforce by a few employees, is 100% of the loan not forgiven, or just the amount paid to employees who are let go?
Can you say that one more time?
I guess what it's saying is, if they receive the loan and still have to reduce workforce by a few employees, will 100% of the loan not be forgiven, or just the portion not going to those employees?
No, it's my understanding that it'll be reduced by the amount of workforce that you had to reduce it by. So you still will get credit for the forgiveness on the wages that you pay out. But right, if you don't spend that money on employees, or you let them go and it falls below that threshold, then you do have time to rehire. And I think we did touch on that a little bit in the data that we went through. But it's my understanding that it will be prorated based on what you lower it by. There's calculations that the bank will have to walk through based on the amount of employees that you had at a certain period of time before, and then the amount of employees that you have at the end of the period. So awesome. I'm sure more details will come there. I think that has been another thing that has been changing a little bit, but it's my understanding that it will be prorated. So
awesome. Can you touch one more time on how mortgage utilities apply for home-based businesses? Mortgage and utilities.
That's a really good question. So I don't have an exact answer there, because I think that would fall under more self-employed type businesses where there hasn't been a ton of guidance let out. It is my understanding that if you are legitimately paying if you have a home office and you're paying for a percentage of your utilities, or using your percentage of your utilities for your home office, then it's my understanding that those would be applicable to spend the funds on. So
Great.
I think based on the documentation that we have now versus what will come out in the coming weeks, I think there will be more guidance on specific home office type situations with self-employed businesses. The guidance that we have now is really specific towards businesses that rent, that have specific business utilities that are a little bit more easy to kind of understand from a from information standpoint. So again, sorry, I don't have a whole lot of guidance there yet. I think my gut is it would be a percentage base of how you calculate your home office expenses, and those would be applicable utilities and interest as long as they were in effect prior to that February 15th date.
Great. If we apply tomorrow on April 3rd and the decision takes 60 days, given that there is a June 30th deadline to spend, could that leave them with only 30 days to spend 2.5 times the monthly payroll amount?
No, so it's based on guidance that I heard yesterday, is that 8-week period starts when you receive your loan funds. And so that same question came up yesterday, and that the answer was because I can apply for this up until June 30th if funds are available through the program. And so you would then have 8 weeks to spend those funds in order to be eligible for the loan forgiveness. So that's the information that I received, and that's kind of how I would have understood it from the beginning anyway. But that's kind of the guidance that the banks have received as of now. So
great. And a business does not need to be shut down in order to qualify for the loan, correct?
No.
Okay. Will the forgiven loan amount be treated as income?
No. That's, to my understanding, no, it will not be. I think more specific guidance can be offered again from your lender, but based on what I've read, that's forgiven.
Awesome. Going back toward 1099 a little bit, are sales commissions, do they qualify for the loan amount?
Yes. So any form of wage, let me pull this back up. Salary, wages, commissions, or tips. It's capped at $100,000 though. So keep that number in mind. But the way we have it on this fact sheet is salaries, wages, commissions, or tips are included.
And that's $100,000, whether it's 1099, W-2, that $100,000 per employee is kind of the most important number to remember from a 30,000 foot view.
Correct. And that number has been consistent this whole week. So I do feel confident that they are trying to cover payroll costs up to that level of compensation and nothing more. So not saying that you can't do it, but it just won't fall under that forgiveness threshold. So
cool. If we already applied for EIDL, can we still apply for PPP and either receive both, or can you cancel an EIDL application and instead apply for PPP?
Yeah, so guidance earlier this week, the answer was no. But based on what we've received as of recently and the calls that I've been on the last 2 days, you can receive both. And you actually do have, again, like I mentioned, the ability to refinance that economic injury disaster loan into a PPP to get a more forgiving rate on the loan. And so I would contact your lender that you have that loan through, and potentially work in specifics to what would be best for you and your company based on the amount that you receive, the amount that you would qualify for under this Paycheck protection program. And they do have the ability to kind of be forgiving in that as far as whether you refinance it, whether you do both. You just can't spend it, to my knowledge, on the same cost. So
what is the verification process to show that you spent the funds on the applicable means in order for the loan to be forgiven?
Good question. I think it's going to be over documentation here. You're gonna have to supply a lot of payroll forms, probably cancel checks for rent. Someone brought up the idea yesterday that it might be wise to, depending on your lender that you go through, whether they offer this or not, open up a separate business checking account and keep all of the funds that you get through that loan in that separate checking account and start paying for your expenses through that. That way you literally have to run a ledger of that bank account for that 8-week period, and it almost calculates itself. So I know that would then require moving some auto payments, whether it's payroll or utilities or rent, over to that new account. But that was a good idea that was brought up if it's feasible in your business. But it's just going to be, I would imagine it's going to be documentation that bank's going to require after the forgiveness period ends on canceled checks, bank statements highlighted with the amount that you paid for leases, payroll reports. I'm sure most payroll companies at that point will be able to run you an 8-week period on your payroll costs, and then exclude any compensation over $100,000 to quickly calculate what you paid in that 8-week period. So that's what I'm banking on, that the documentation will require. But again, the information that we've received in guidance is on the application process now. I'm sure over the next 60 days, in 8 weeks, there will be a lot more guidance on exactly what you need to supply for documentation for the forgiveness. But my advisement would be keep invoices, keep checks, keep credit card bills, just to over document what you spend it on. So
very helpful.
Yep. The other thing too, I would probably venture to do is any salaried employees that you have over $100,000 in salaries and wages for the year, maybe in your payroll system, lower them down to $100,000 for that 8-week period. That way it's really clean when you run your payroll reports that they're not getting paid more than that for that specific 8-week period. And then if they need additional compensation and you have other funds to pay them with, maybe you run a separate payroll there that you're not using those funds. So that would just be another guidance that I would offer.
Great. So from the forgiveness requirements back to this, from when it comes to employees, is it strictly based on the dollar amount? Is it based on a head count? If it is based on a head count, is it the same actual employee? As in, if we terminate one employee, can we hire a new one to maintain that head count? And if so, do the salaries need to match?
Good question. I believe you have to pull up my documents here. The guidance that I've got is your loan forgiveness will be reduced if you decrease your full-time employee headcount. And so the way I read that is, if you restore it, rehiring, you have until June 30th, 2020 to restore your full-time employment and salary levels for any changes made between February 15th and April 26th. So again, I'm not 100% sure from that guidance as to whether it is the number or the actual employee. But I'm assuming it is the number. So again, there will be more documentation there as to who you need to rehire, and more guidance there. But the way I read it is it's probably going to be more so on the full-time equivalent employees, not that specific one. So forgive me with kind of the expertise there. I'm not 100% sure, but that's kind of the way I would read it.
I have submitted it. Now, I don't know if this is referring to an employer or a 1099 contractor, Josh, but I have submitted an application and have a number for my application. Do I need to resubmit the application through my bank on Friday, which is maybe they were referring to next Friday, which is the 1099 deadline, or will the applications in the line be processed?
Good question. I'm not 100% sure. That would be probably a question for the lender that you went through. If you applied through a lender, they'd probably give you an expectation on what you need to do there. I would imagine if you have a number, then you are in process to do that. And if you fall under that self-employed contractor type company or individual, then they would start processing that as of the allotted time period that they're able to. So I would certainly reach out to your lender who you have that number from, just to get approval there on that. So
I believe you touched on this, Josh, but I think it's a good clarifier. Until what date are we required to retain our employees to still qualify for forgiveness? payouts. In the event that we have to lay off or furlough employees after June 30th, so let's say they spent the full 8 weeks that were given to them on those active employees, they received the funding appropriately, and they lay them off after within the following 8 weeks, will the loan still be forgiven?
It should be. Again, I'm not 100% sure of that and how the specific dates will work into it. But based on, again, the guidance that we've gotten, if you keep those employees and you pay them with the amount of the funds in that 8-week time period, the purpose is to keep them employed in that 8-week time period. And then you prove that you paid them within that 8-week time period, the loan should be forgiven right after that, whenever the documentation is supplied and the bank can approve the loan forgiveness. I don't think there is anything that I've read specifically that if you have to fire or lay off in July or August, if that then retroactively negates the forgiveness. I haven't read specifics on that, and I wouldn't think that would do it, because again, this whole program is to keep those specific income levels constant in the short term, rather than projecting what could happen in July, August, September. So that's the way I read it. But that's a good question, and I'm not 100% sure though.
Here's a unique one. We are a 2-person partnership that is 3 years old. We provide owner payouts to our partners, but do not yet have salaries, as we do not have consistent income. Do we qualify, and can we show that those are our salaries by adding up owner payouts?
Yeah, so I think that's going to fall in that self-employed. They qualify as self-employed individuals if they're 2 owners of a partnership. And so whatever documentation will need to be supplied, whether it's a K-1 that shows 2019 income and the payouts that they received up to $100,000, that would be my feeling on what they're going to require. In the year to date for 2020, I could imagine that again they're gonna want bank statements that show payouts to those individual partners to substantiate that level if it is up to $100,000. So that's going to fall under that self-employed documentation that we should get more guidance on in the coming week, whether it's again K-1s from a prior year, 1099s that are issued to the partnership as a whole that substantiates the total revenue that's split by those 2 partners. A number of things, invoices that are received in 2020, as long as year-to-date bank statements that are showing deposits going in. So,
great. We're getting towards the tail end here. A couple more questions, then I'm going to have you do maybe one more overview of what you feel are the most important few facts.
Yeah.
But last question being, is there any insight on future grants after this 8-week period?
To my knowledge, no. I've heard that, again, depending on this cap and how quickly it goes, that specific $349 billion cap for this program specific, I can imagine that if this gets used up in the coming weeks and we're still at a spot as an economy where there's still a need there, I could imagine that something gets extended or that amount gets raised some. So
okay.
I don't have any specific guidance. I don't know if anyone can project that for the future coming weeks or months, but all I know is the short term right now, and it's these specific programs that we have. So again, I think if this kind of level of uncertainty pushes further into the summer, even further into Q3, I think that there will be additional programs like this to fund, but I'm not 100% sure. So.
Okay. So just kind of for those that might have joined us late, could you do just a final review? If you feel like there are 3 to 5 facts that are just the most important thing when it comes to this, could you do a recap of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I think the dates are important and who qualifies. So as of tomorrow, based on the guidance that we have, small businesses and sole proprietorships can start applying with banks. I would continue to reach out to lenders if you're not getting much communication from the banks that you've done a lot of business with. If it is bigger banks, I would encourage looking at community banks, looking at credit unions, look for any and all to where you can feel confident that your application will get processed. I feel confident that over the coming weeks, there will be systems where this can be done quickly. And that's based on guidance that we've gotten from the top, that the desire is to be able to issue these funds very quickly after you get your application in. It's gonna take time for those banks to sort through some of those specifics. So if you're feeling kind of lost right now and no one responding and you don't know where to do your application, you're not alone. Keep pursuing it, and keep reaching out to other banks too. But I've had great luck with community banks that I've worked with. Again, if you're an independent contractor or self-employed individual, I know we have a ton of those here, and based on the questions that we got, that tentative date is April 10th. And so between now and then, I would gather the documents that I feel like would be specific to that, whether it's your business bank account statements for the first 3 months, your 2019 tax returns, if you filed those already, any 1099s that you received for 2019 that'll help substantiate income. Use this next couple of days to get those documents in order, as well as reaching out to a lender. The businesses, again, that can apply are 500 or fewer employees. So again, more businesses can apply for this than probably not apply for this. So if you're questioning that, you probably do fit that category. So, but again, read the facts. There's so many things out there from reputable sources that help you walk through whether your business is eligible to apply for this. So if I can't answer it, then I will hopefully point you in the direction that someone that can. The loan amount, again, is 2.5 times your monthly average payroll. And so there is still documentation and guidance coming out on whether that's the trailing 12 months, whether if you're a seasonal business, is it this current season that we're in? The lender will have a lot of guidance on that either today or tomorrow to help guide you there. And it is a $10 million cap. Cap on wages is $100,000. So that's kind of the cap on what you can pay out. And then per employee. Forgiveness, you have to spend it in the 8-week period after you get your loan and document what you spend it on, whether it's payroll costs, interest, rent, utility costs over that 8-week period. So again, I know that was a lot. I hope I was a great resource. Again, there are so many things that are again constantly being changed. So I apologize for any questions I couldn't answer. Hopefully it wasn't because of preparation, but rather lack of guidance, which I think everyone, including banks, are kind of feeling right now. So I would encourage you that if you're not getting the answer that you need from a lender, just pursue them with grace, knowing that they're trying to figure out probably 10 times more than what we're trying to figure out now. This is something that's unprecedented, that they're just trying to build the foundation to be able to do this in an accurate way. So appreciate all of you for joining us today and being part of this Rome community. I appreciate every single question that we had, and hopefully again that we were great resources in this time. So,
and a couple more things as we close. This entire conversation we recorded, so when we follow up with you via email, everyone that was a part of this will receive that follow-up email. It'll have this full recording in case you need to go back to hear any information. It will also have contact information as well as resources. So stand by for that. We should get that out sometime before the end of the week. We do have several other webinars that we are putting on as a company right now. I know several of y'all that were with us today joined us for Steve Cesari, owner and founder of the Cesari companies. He's managed $4+ billion worth of organizations' marketing strategies over his career. He is leading us through a series called Staying Up in a Down Economy. He will be on part 2 of that series beginning next Tuesday at 10 a.m. We will also send a link for that when we send the follow-up email. A week from today, once again at 10 a.m., will be Demi Hicks, also a Rome member, DBH Consulting. Her talk will be focused on moving forward with connections, possibilities, and hope through this season that we're all navigating right now. So we are very grateful that you guys all took time out of your Thursday to join us. Look out for that email that'll come to you tomorrow. Lots of information, lots of resources. We will have the questions typed out as well as this recording. And I hope that you found something that'll help your small business, as Josh has guided our small business through as well. As our owner would say, we're scrappy entrepreneurs serving scrappy entrepreneurs. So we are right there with you in the midst of all this, and it's an honor to partner with you. So thank you. Have a great day and a good rest of the week.